I think there's a fee fi fo fum kind of quality to him. You know,
right? That's a draft jargon that I didn't have in the bag, but it's in the bag now. Fee fi fo fum. Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for April the 12th. I am your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. And today we've got one more network to tag on to our list of accolades because I am joined by the man himself, in my opinion, when it comes to Nashville media in the draft space this time of year. This guy knows just as much as just about anybody. It's him and James Foster up there for me. He has done the legwork. And when it comes to linemen in particular, this guy is a resident expert. So I knew I had to bring him in because that's what we're doing today. We're talking about the linemen. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today for the full show is Stoney Keeley of the SoBros Network. Stoney, how are you, man? I'm so excited to finally have you on the show.
Man, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Easton. This time, I'm going to try and not have you with your finger on the bleep button this time. So
yeah, good point. I forget you have been on the show once, but it was with Zach, so that doesn't really count. I had to get you away from that. Our very fun and lovable little stooge had to get him out of here so that you and I could talk shop on these guys. And no, absolutely not. That social clip that I put out was the first time I ever got to use my bleep sound effect, which I had in my like video elements folder for this show for well over a year and I was just waiting for somebody. I don't tell the guests not to say anything. I'm just waiting for somebody to give me an excuse to use it. And then you did. And I was like, yes. And so I got to use it, and I appreciate you for that. And if today you feel so compelled by these mighty men who are going to be big meaty men slapping meat is what we're talking about today. And it can get you a little excited sometimes. I can understand that. So
well, thank you for the kind words as well. Love doing this. I love watching the offensive linemen because it is the big meaty men slapping meat. I don't know. There's something like primal about two behemoths meeting on the football field and just finding out like one man wins, one man loses. There's no in between. It's just the purest test of strength on the football field, if you ask me.
Well, I would argue it's the purest form of football itself. I think in terms of just embodying the sport, nothing feels more like football. I mean, because every element of football, it's speed and skill and size and finesse, and it's pretty and it's magical and it's beautiful, and we love those parts, like obviously. But real football, and one could very easily argue, I would argue, the element of the game that actually wins and loses the game more often than not is in the trenches, and that is the complete opposite, right? It is ugly, it is dirty, it is gross. The technique and I'm not an expert on offensive line by any means, but because I am, it's such a kind of foreign language when it comes to the different positions and trying to evaluate. I do a very thorough job of listening to folks in the media who I trust on offensive linemen to gauge my opinion based on what they have to say. And they're always talking about it, making it seem like to me that offensive line, like technique, the way that certain guys win and lose, it varies very widely. Like no one really cares how you get the job done as long as you get the job done in the trenches. And there's a lot of ugly when you zoom in, get off the all 22 tape and zoom in to the boys in the middle. It's gross, it's ugly, it's war, but they're the ones doing the dirty work. They're doing the heavy lifting. And I think this time of year in particular, and to even further qualify it for Titans fans, I was thinking about this last night, Stoney. I put out some feeler polls like February 29th on my Twitter page of all the questions I could think of at that time that I was predicting would become big sticking points for the Titans by the end of the offseason or throughout the offseason. Questions about quarterback. At the time it was, will they or will they not keep certain free agents? Will they not pursue this position in the draft? That kind of thing, right? And the point of that was so that I can bring it back up here in just over 2 weeks, I guess. We're 2 weeks and a couple of days away from the draft, and I'm going to bring those back out. The world's shortest time capsule. I'll bring back and see just how wrong we were. That was the idea of it, is trying to be able to show tangibly, like the offseason, your opinion's going to change 17 times, and what you think today is not what you'll think a month from now. And this time of year in particular, just a couple of weeks outside of the draft, it is so easy for any fan, but I think Titans fans in particular, to be enamored with everything but the linemen in the draft, because that's the pretty and shiny object, right? We started this year in February. If you asked Titans fans online or in the stadium, who do you want or what position do you want for this team in the draft? What's the number one priority? You would have gotten a resounding, oh, it's lineman, it's tackle, give me Paris Johnson Jr., right? Everyone was unified on the exact guy they wanted the Titans to draft, like the second the season ended, practically. And yet here we are, like 2 or 3 months later, and suddenly it seems like everybody would be fine with Paris Johnson Jr., but we are just horned up to the gills for guys like JSN at 11, or going up to 3 to get Anthony Richardson. Like the skill position guys creep in no matter what. Even if you're a team who, I don't know, has spent 2 years with one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and you can acknowledge that and understand that, you still can't help yourself but fall into the trap of being like, oh, but JSN though, oh, but a quarterback though. Like, it's really difficult. And this might serve as a sobering reminder of the talent, immense talent, that you can find at the offensive line position in this draft. So that's my spiel. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's actually a really good place for the Titans to be, because they've done the work in free agency to kind of fill holes so that, the emergency gaps are covered, if you will. So it really frees them up to just be able to, really go a number of different ways there in the first round. And I still don't think that offensive tackle is off the table completely there at 11. And I think I don't think it's off the table
at all. No.
I think I'm still a proponent of trading back if they can find a dance partner to do so. If one of these quarterbacks begins to fall, maybe somebody trades up to get them. The Titans can pick up an extra pick or two this year and slide back into the 20s and still get good talent that's going to fill needs and provide a little bit of promise. I think you can still get a foundational building block there in the end of the first round.
So let's talk about some of these guys. But the last thing I want to mention before we get to that, we're covering the interior offensive linemen today on Wednesday. Tomorrow on Thursday, the episode that Stoney, very gracious with his time. I think maybe it's only because I brought him on for the lineman. No other position he might be willing to do this for. But well, I said, can we get a 2-for-1 special on the lineman? And he said yes.
Yeah, so, I can't do the cornerbacks. We already talked about that before we started recording. I think I've watched like 2 cornerbacks that weren't at the Senior Bowl.
So, yeah, and how many linemen have you watched? You were telling me that.
Yeah, I think I've got 60 offensive linemen ranked,
which is just about all of them.
Yeah. Well, they keep popping up. I tell myself, like, Stoney, you're done. Move on to the cornerbacks. But then I see somebody write something about Luke Haggard out of Indiana. And I'm like, got to get on Luke Haggard before the draft.
Well, for people that are familiar with the Beast, Dane Brugler's massive draft guide he puts out, actually a day or two ago, it came out on The Athletic. That is if you're looking for like very, very back of the draft class guys, the undrafted of the undrafted free agents, like the very bottom of the barrel, that's the place to go. I'm gonna go just pull all of the linemen at the very, lineman 374 from his list, and then start like IV drip feeding them to you every day. I'm gonna just text you a name with no context that's gonna be enough to force you to spend time on Jim Bob Cooter out in Iowa State, backup instead of Emmanuel Forbes, the cornerback out of Mississippi State, who you should be paying attention to. But yeah, so we can talk about the interior guys tomorrow, tackles, or interior guys today, tackles tomorrow, with Stoney back with us then. If you haven't been paying attention to this series or are new to the podcast, welcome. Appreciate you being here. We have already covered almost all of the defensive position groups in previous episodes. We saved cornerbacks actually for next week, because that is the one defensive group that is both rich with talent, and also, I think, whether you think the Titans need a cornerback or not, I'm relatively certain they are interested in them in this draft class. So we're saving that for next week with the premier positions. It bumped a couple of premier positions, the tackles and the interior guys, to this week. And with that, we have done our linebackers, safeties, edge, and defensive linemen already. JT and I went through our top 10 lists in previous episodes. Those should be the most recent 4 episodes. So as soon as you're done listening to this, go and listen to those so you can learn about the entire class. Stoney, an overarching thought on this draft class, the interior guys in particular. I don't know about you. I think generally speaking, the interior class is among maybe top to bottom on the weak side of the scale in this draft. I think it's a weaker class by a little bit than the tackles, but it's, historically speaking, I think a healthy draft class with guys all up and down the board available in different rounds that can be helpful NFL players. What are your thoughts on the interior class?
I like the interior class compared to the tackle class because I think you have more guys that are NFL ready. Like I think there are several guards in this class that are going to have the opportunity to start week one. And maybe that's kind of a bold thing to say, but
no, I love that we disagree on that. I love that. That is interesting.
I see a lot of polish with the guards. Center, not so much. I think
center is really it's a bottom of the barrel kind of thing. To be fair, there are one or two really good centers we're about to talk about, but beyond that, not really.
I like two centers in this class that are going to be ready-made week one NFL starters.
Yeah, they're studs.
Whereas with the tackles, I really only see two guys that are bona fide stud potential in my book. That's not a trademark term. Bona fide stud potential.
Right,
But then it's littered. I'm talking like 15, 16 deep with guys that have really high upside. So I think that's the value in the tackle class compared to the offensive guard class, or I should say the interior offensive line, is that there's a much higher ceiling with the tackles, but I feel like there's a much higher floor with the interior guys.
I love that we disagree on that. And it makes me even more excited to record tomorrow's episode when we get to the tackles, because my cutoff for guys seems to be much different than you. Whereas I think I agree that there are in total like 17 guys with crazy high upside. I think there's more than two of them that are bona fide stars. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. I won't jump the shark there. Let's focus on these.
We got to tease the people. We got to let them know. Tune in.
Just a little tease. Yeah, tomorrow. Stoney, one of us it's a death match. One of us won't come out of a podcast alive. But until then, we have to talk about the interior linemen. And it's something I wrote down earlier today, listening to I believe it was Greg Cosell talking about linemen in a show a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about this quote from Dante Scarnecchia, who's the legendary line coach up in New England. He and the podcast host he was speaking to were discussing which elements of offensive line scouting, which traits are more or less important. What are the things that matter most when you're evaluating this talent and trying to put together a team? And oftentimes, one of the first words people mention is athleticism, right? And that's a natural thing to say. It's the big guys on the field, so they're the ones least likely visually to be athletic. You would like to get the freaks who happen to be huge and also athletic. That makes sense on the surface. But what he was talking about, Cosell was mentioning in this, I guess this is Scarnecchia's opinion, maybe athleticism is a little bit overrated when we evaluate these guys. And I think that particularly applies to the interior linemen. For tackles, being athletic is important. Like, how many unathletic tackles are successful in the NFL? Not many. You have to be able to be a big bodied guy and also have arguably the freakiest athletes on the entire field, the edge defenders, not get around you and murder the guy you're supposed to be protecting. So those guys, athleticism definitely matters. With the interior guys, and this is the quote from Scarnecchia that I found interesting. He used to say, and this is probably a paraphrase, with offensive line evaluation, are they smart? Are they tough? And are they athletic enough? I feel like the situation and the opponent, having a feel for your situation, having a feel for your opponent, your teamwork with the other four or more guys on the offensive line, being able to work together as a unit. An offensive line, especially if you watch run blocking tape, a really high caliber offensive line working in unison that's the element of offensive line play that's beautiful. That is poetry in motion. It is music that they're making. It is really fantastic to watch, but it's really difficult to get to that level. Like, not everybody has the Philadelphia Eagles run blocking scheme. What are your thoughts on that general concept when you are evaluating these guys? What are the different traits you're looking for, and maybe something you value a little bit more, a little bit less?
I'm a sucker for guys that have, obvious competitive fire. And I think that is something that you can really pair with the athleticism, with the polish, the technique, the footwork, all of these physical and athletic traits. You pair it with the fiery spirit, and that's how, to me, you get elite prospects in the NFL, because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have that desire, you can flame out in the NFL pretty quickly. So I'm a sucker for a guy that gets out there and initiates contact and hits people and puts people in the dirt, drivers, that sort of thing. That's something that I value quite a bit. And then just, I think you can simplify a lot of offensive line scouting, something you alluded to earlier in the podcast. Just watch the guys one-on-one and see who wins. And if you've got a guy that you're watching and you notice he's winning pretty regularly, then you begin to unpack, well, how is he winning? You look at the matchups, you see, like, is he still able to do this against different competition, different styles of defensive linemen? It's all I would really add to the assessment there. But I think that's a pretty good point, comparing the tackles to the interior guys.
All right, let's get into our actual top 10 lists here. And I didn't mention this to you before the show, so I'll go first on this one, because I need to give you a chance. Just we've been mentioning, if you have any guys that are just outside your top 10 that you think deserve a mention, they deserve to throw them a bone. A guy that is, in your top 20 maybe, that you're like, oh, but that's my guy. We've been mentioning those guys. For me, with the interior guys, I only had one, and that person was oh, no, I'm totally wrong. Just kidding. I got my offensive tackle and interior offensive line lists wrong. I have one for tomorrow, not today. I cut it off at 10. Right. So never mind. If you have any interior guys, I think there are only 10 interior guys we're talking about. Clearly, I think the rest are bums. What about you? What were your thoughts on any guys that were honorable mentions?
So I have my list broken down by guard and center.
Okay.
When you told me that we were just doing interior, I combined them together, and a couple of guys that I really like got booted out of my top 10.
Okay.
I really like John Gaines II out of UCLA, right guard prospect. And then I like Chandler Zavala out of NC State.
Zavala. I like him so much, he's in my top 10. So we'll talk about him a little bit in a minute. But
dude, I love watching both of those guys. I think it's like the exact same evaluation. You just flip, one's on the left side, one's on the right side. They're on opposite sides of the center.
Draft them both as like a twin pairing you can just have on your line. They'll work in unison, right?
There you go. I mean, you're trying to protect the quarterback, specifically, pass protection. I think both of these guys have the traits to be really, really good if they end up with the right team and the right offense.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Let's get into our top 10. We'll break it up in smaller chunks. So let's start with our first four guys, starting with number 10. So my number 10 interior offensive lineman is Luke Weipler out of Ohio State. My 9th guy is, and I might need an assist on this one. Do you know how to pronounce the Alabama interior guy's name? Emil Ekiyor?
Ekiyor Jr.? Yeah.
Ekiyor Jr.? That's what we're going with then. Okay. We're going to go with
I don't know, but
Emil.
I'm pretty high on him too. So
yeah, Emil Jr. Emil Jr. is my number 9 out of Alabama. And then we got a couple of back-to-back rough names here. This is Olusegun Oluwatimi. Okay, Oluwatimi. I can do that.
Just call him Olu.
That's you're right. It starts Olu. I did not put that together. All right, Olu is my 8th guy out of Michigan. And then my 7th interior offensive lineman is Chandler Zavala out of NC State. Okay, got through that. Who are your first 4 guys on the list?
So I'm going with Olu at number 10. I think he's my other guy that I think is one of 2 centers that are going to be starting week 1 in the NFL.
Wow. Okay.
At number 9, I'm going with okay, let me make sure. All right, I got my list. I'm looking at the right list.
Cross-reference correctly. Yep, I got you. No worries.
I'm going with Jaxson Kirkland out of the University of Washington.
Interesting. Okay, I have hand up. I don't know a lot about that guy, so you're going to have to teach us here in a minute.
He's got a little bit of guard tackle versatility, so he's technically on both of my lists, but I don't think we're going to talk about him tomorrow based on where I've got him among tackles. I think he projects as a guard. I think he's going to kick inside at the NFL level.
Okay.
And then number 8, I'm going with Braeden Daniels out of Utah. I really like him.
I could have told you had him on this list. I can't wait to talk about him.
I'm all for him being a Tennessee Titan at the end of this thing when it's all said and done.
You've only tweeted about it a dozen times at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then number 7, a guy that I'm a lot higher on than a lot of other people. We talked about him when Zach and I joined your show from Mobile, Alabama.
Yep.
Oh, and Tyler Steen, left guard.
Steen. Okay. I am going to keep what I was about to say to myself until tomorrow's episode. So again, another tease. I have some thoughts on Tyler Steen as well, but I think it pertains more to tomorrow's conversation. All right, so we've got our guys out of the way. The only guy in this group that we have in common is Olu. So let's start with him. Olu, you have your evaluation on him. You've watched the tape. Guests first. Give me your thoughts on him, and I guess we can go ahead and set a baseline here. We've been referencing the consensus draft board just to give people a baseline of where the zeitgeist is on these guys. And Olu for interior offensive lineman, he is interior offensive lineman 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we are slightly higher on him than that. He's my interior guy, number 9, or number 8, and he's your number 10. Tell me what you liked about Olu.
Well, I think the criticisms of his drive in the run game are, I don't want to say they're unfounded because you see it, but I think it's being overblown a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, he's a tough guy. He's a fighter. He's a scrapper. We saw Roshan Johnson quote tweet Jim Nagy the other day, who was kind of singing Olu's praises, and he was like, "This guy's a dog." And I saw that with him too. So I think he's capable. He plays with a low center of gravity, and he's got good hands. He's a really sticky guy. He just leeches onto people. And I think he's a wrestler, man. Like, he's not a guy that I think is going to fold when defensive linemen try to maneuver him out of the play, or you're not going to throw him out the club or anything like that. I think he's a really good, sticky interior offensive line prospect that I think a lot of people are sleeping on how polished of an overall game that he's got, because they're focusing on the foot speed and the run game and the size and that sort of thing. Like, just don't overthink it with this guy.
Yeah, I like him a good bit as well. From a measurement standpoint, he's not got a whole lot to bring to the table, but his explosiveness is there, right? So his explosiveness with his vertical jump, his broad jump, 63rd and 90th percentile, respectively. He's a heavy enough guy for sure. 309 pounds, 74th percentile. Just shy of 6'3" is 20th percentile for, he's listed as a center on here. So short even for a center. He's got not great speed, but as a center, you don't really need to be all that fast. It's not the biggest issue. From a grade standpoint on PFF, just for reference, you can see, and this is an important thing for me, you'll realize very quickly, I like guys that are trending upwards. So like, if I find somebody and I look at and PFF's not the Bible, obviously, but generally speaking, I think that their overall grade for a guy on a season is more or less reflective of how well he did that year. And then you can see the stats yourself there. And I like guys that are going from like a 71 to a 76 to an 85. Like, I want a guy that is not peaked, is still going up, and is not flatlined either. And that, I think that's indicative of a guy that has he's got a little more meat on the bone in terms of development. When a guy comes out of college fully developed, that's great, but you already know what you've got, right? There's no real upside necessarily. I think Olu is one of those guys. He got better every single year in college. He played more every single year in college, 3-year player at Michigan, and his grades went up every single year. The thing that stood out to me when I was looking at his grading year by year is not only did he get better year to year, but he got more consistent year to year. He had a lot of really up and down games in 2020 as a freshman, but then as a junior this past season, he didn't have a single high or low score by game, according to PFF, outside of roughly 12 points. So it was like week in and week out, this guy is there. That's another thing that I think is overlooked. You hear oftentimes people talk about college prospects. There's more emotions involved. They're not quite professionals. They're still kids. There's, the things in their life. You don't know quite the guy you might get from a mental standpoint week in and week out. Well, that kind of thing, I think, is a sneaky indicator of somebody that is mentally very mature. And with the center, I mean, as well as I do, that guy needs to be the one who is the brains of the operation on the offensive line. And so for a guy like him, who's projected to be a center, played it in college, I think that he's got a lot of things that are a little more intangible, require a little bit of digging, that really attract me to him. The next guy on your list was who? Remind me.
Jaxson Kirkland.
Yes. Okay. I don't have it written down because. Okay. Yeah. So I don't have this guy on my list. Tell me what you saw in him and why he's in your top 10 interior guys.
Well, I think he's got a really high floor in the NFL. Like I said, I mean, he technically does offer tackle guard versatility, but I don't know that the traits are there for him to keep up with speedy edge rushers in the NFL. So I think he will kick inside at left guard. Look, he's got a pedigree. He's got the experience you look for in a high floor, safe offensive line prospect. I think I was impressed with how engaged he was with his hand. He plays from a wide stance, leans into his guy a little bit. But it's by and large, he plays with pretty good leverage. I think he's athletic enough to pull and get to the second level, keeps his feet moving when he's engaged in a block. I mean, a lot of really nice technical stuff to his game, but you do worry about the traits and the style with him. So I think that's the only thing that's probably keeping him out of higher round consideration.
The size is there with Jaxson Kirkland out of Washington. I'm looking at it here. He's in the 74th percentile for weight, 96th percentile for height. I've got him. I'm looking at my further on down my big board. He is my. I actually technically have him in the tackles list here. I probably should move him over, but he is my tackle 24. But that is probably a little bit unfair. Or maybe that's just because I looked at him through the lens of a tackle. Maybe I need to go back and consider him moving into guard. I just was considering him a tackle based on his size. Now his reach is a little bit undersized, and that's probably ultimately the reason why he might get moved inside, but I could see him as a swing tackle in the NFL. He's probably ultimately going to be that if tackle is where he stays, but if he moves inside, you could see some winning here. I think I'm just looking at the general statistics. He's another guy that improved year on year, has played a lot of football, and he's got the size there. So yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of 4th, 5th, 6th round grades on him, depending on where you look. But the comp that, I mean, here on PFF, the comp they gave him was Storm Norton, who's a pretty good football player. So if that's the high end, then would not necessarily be a bad idea to take a flyer on him if he is still around on that third day. You had a second. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say I had to revisit my notes for a minute, but there were a couple of times that I watched him where I noticed when they did pull him that he kind of got jammed up behind the right guard. And I think that's where you see the traits come into play, where maybe he doesn't have the necessary speed that you look for in an elite prospect in that regard. Like it's there with him, but it's not consistent. There were times that I felt like he was just kind of running into traffic. He drifted a bit. And I don't think that is an ideal quality in a potential starter.
You don't say. Who's the number 8 guy on your list? He's another one that I didn't have, and I've already forgotten who it was.
Well, now I'm going to have to revisit.
Now you're going to have to redo the math. No, count back up the board. Number 8
was Braeden Daniels.
Oh, that's right. Daniels. Yes. Okay. So I have evaluated Braeden Daniels. He is.
I love him.
I know you do. If I had to name an honorable mention today, he's probably the one I would have gotten into. We'll consider it cut for time, but I wanted to let you get into it with Braeden Daniels. So tell me what it is exactly about Daniels that you love so much and why you want him to be a Titan so badly.
Well, I mean, they're looking for pass protectors. If you
sure
read the tea leaves,
it's a good elevator pitch on this guy. Need pass rush?
They're looking for pass protectors.
I offer Braeden Daniels. Yeah.
It's something that he does really well. I mean, it's a lot of fun to watch. The knock on him is like consistency and run blocking, which I feel like you hear a lot with these guards that kind of circle around the Titans verse this draft period. But man, I think he's kind of underrated in that regard. There are times that you watch his tape and you see him kind of fail to sustain a block where he pops a guy and then the guy just goes right by him like it's nothing. But I saw some flashes in there, specifically a touchdown run against USC when he just got low on a down block and just drove his feet and moved his guy out of the way, opened up a wide hole for a touchdown. And I'm like, dude, this guy can run block. So I think he's a more complete offensive line prospect than he's being given credit for. I think his weight is an issue anytime you're playing offensive line in the NFL and you're sub 300 pounds. I think that's probably a problem, but he's really athletic, really good mover, really good pass protector. And I think he has, I think he's capable to run block as well. So I listen, I'm all for it. You want to invest a 3rd round pick in the guy.
Right.
I'm not, some people might be mad about that. Some people might call it a reach. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm going to be doing cartwheels.
Well, Braeden Daniels out of Utah is the 161th. That counts. Good English. Yeah, numbers. We count that bucket. 161st player overall on the consensus draft board. He's listed here as an interior guy. He was one of the guys at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, right? You got to see him in Mobile.
He was supposed to be there, but I think
he not?
I don't think he I don't know what the issue was, but he never showed up.
Okay. He must have had something going on. Either way, he is you're much higher on him than most, but he's on the consensus board got a 4th round grade. So a 3rd round reach wouldn't be the biggest issue in the world. If you want him for the Titans, I understand why you want him in the 3rd, because he's not going to be there in the 5th. And the Titans owe their 4th to the Falcons for one Mr. Julio Jones. The guy is a funny web on Mock Draftable because he is an explosive athlete to the moon, but his weight is significantly lower than you would maybe like it to be at the guard position. He's just 6 pounds shy of 300, but that's the 2nd percentile at the guard position. He's 6'4" and 1/8 inches tall, plenty of height, 33-inch arms. That's why he's an interior guy. His speed is fantastic, 96th percentile, a 4.99. Not often you find linemen that can run sub 5. And his 10-yard split is the 93rd percentile, so he's explosive as well. His vertical and broad are 81 and 87th percentile. And then he's got really nice agility. His 3-cone and 20-yard shuttle are both in the 80th and 85th percentile. So the guy's an athlete. There's no doubt about this guy being a bona fide athlete. And if you're wanting somebody that, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to put the dots together, very athletic guard. He can do a lot of stunting. He can do a lot of pulling. And that's the kind of thing that a clever offensive coordinator is going to salivate at the idea of. From a college performance perspective, I'm pulling up his numbers here as we do some awesome radio.
Yeah. This is what the people tune in for.
That's what they say, is as much dead air as possible. Yeah, here we go. So he probably would be higher on these draft boards if he'd had a better final season. His peak was his 2nd most recent year in Utah. He had an 84 overall PFF grade, played almost 1,000 offensive snaps. Oh, what were you going to say?
But he's playing left tackle in 2022.
Yes, exactly. This is what I was going to specify.
I should have known. I should have cut you off.
I'm going to miss some things out here. I didn't quite miss that one. Daniels did play at the tackle position, left tackle. I didn't know that part, so thanks for helping me out there. He played left tackle his senior year. Obviously, those grades are reflective of the fact that he's a much better interior guy than on the outside. He only allowed 2 hits and 13 hurries as a guard in his final year and just 1 sack on the season. His gap grade is really low. So that's the only massive concern for him. It is like bottom of the barrel low. Every other metric is very nice. His zone grade, his run blocking, his pass blocking, his true pass set block grade, like they're all well above average. His ability in zone and pass blocking are elite. So this guy, he is going to be, like you said, an awesome pass blocker. The only concerns really are that size and whether or not he still knows how to play guard, but coming off of that, moving back to the old position, you'd like to hope that he can just pick it right back up and get to the winning ways of his 2021 season. The 4th guy that you got, or your 7th overall player was Tyler Steen, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, Tyler Steen made me feel like a massive idiot the week of the Senior Bowl because
I know you came on the show and told me all about how dumb you felt.
So they play him at left tackle all week long, And then during the game, they actually kick him inside to play left guard. And all week I'm like, oh, he's got tackle potential. Like, I don't see that much of a difference between some of the guys that are being considered for the first round and him. And then the game comes and they kick him inside at guard. So I think that is probably, I think he's one of the few prospects in this class that does offer true tackle guard versatility, in the sense that you're not going to Tyler Steen at left tackle in a pinch or something like that. If you need him to play there, I think he's capable of playing there, not just an emergency situation. Likewise, similar thing with guard. I like Steen's power. I liked the way he won reps in Mobile. I mean, I can still vividly see in my mind's eye Byron Young throwing that spin move right at Tyler Steen, and Tyler Steen just throwing him out of the play like he's just flicking a flea off of his arm or something like that. A very powerful guy. I thought he showed some pretty good technique. I know he could have gotten a little bit lower run blocking, and the footwork, hand usage, and stuff like that was a little inconsistent. But like I was talking about earlier, bottom line is that he was winning reps that week in Mobile. The curious thing about Tyler Steen, the draft community seemed pretty low on him. It's watching the tape, because you just don't see that explosive, dominant guy on the tape. And I really, any reason I were to come up with for why that is would just be a reckless, speculative guess at this point, because the tape just really isn't all that good. And I'm a Bama fan on Saturdays, so I watched plenty of Tyler Steen and just thought, whatever. He's a guy. He's another guy that's going to get into the league because of his helmet. But man, there's a spark there with him in this pre-draft process that I think there's enough to latch onto there to where he's gonna get a chance in the NFL.
So I'm going to hang on to my thoughts on Steen. I agree with a lot of what you just said. I'm going to hang on to it for an unspoken future potential next episode when I talk about him a little bit more. And I have him as a tackle, if I've not made that obvious, and he is on my board. So we'll talk about him tomorrow. I'll move on to the one guy that you left off of your board, at least so far, that I have on mine. And that is Chandler Zavala out of NC State. He is the overall number 128. He's the 128th player on the consensus big board. He is the consensus interior offensive lineman 8. He is my number 7, I believe. Yes, he's my 7th interior offensive lineman. And what I saw in him that maybe some others don't, his measurables, like he's got the goods there. 325 pounds, 6'5". This is a big fella. The things that I saw when I watched a bit of his tape, and he's got all the traits you expect, like, he's got shorter than average arms. He's got an all right wingspan despite having shorter arms, all of those things. He could be a little bit taller, a little bit, but he could be a little bit heavier, but he's certainly got the height you're looking for. The thing about him that I loved so much is he's not the most polished guy. Yes, I agree. He's going to be a project. I don't see this guy as a week one or year one starter in any capacity. But at his size, I loved his footwork. I think that he's not a versatile guy. You need him to play the guard position, but he's got very good feet. I think if you're a run first team, this guy can be your run grader. Similar to, I'm trying to think of a decent example of somebody that he's going to be fine in pass protection. He's not going to disappoint in any way in the run game. I'm positive of that. And he's 24 years old, but he's not spent a ton of time at this size. He was a 260-pound lineman with a full year of experience before he jumped up to 325. So there's some element of learning to play at the proper weight. He also dealt with some injuries that I just don't think he's played a ton of football. Just played 2 years at NC State in college. A total of 17 total college games, just over 1,000 total snaps. And yet he allowed no sacks in those 2 years, just 1 hit and 7 total hurries. I like this guy a lot as somebody, if you're a team that could use a road grader and use a luxury pick on this guy. What's the first team that comes to mind? The Eagles. This guy's got Eagles written all over him to me. Man. Yeah. He's a guy that you can get in that day 3. Is he not quite a day 3 guy, but like a round 3 guy rather. I think that he could be really nice for a team a year or two removed from being drafted.
Yeah, he's got some pancakes on his tape too.
Yeah, he does.
You love to see that. Like I know like probably not very typical terminology here, but I would call him like squatty. Like he's got that bowling ball kind of build that is just, I mean,
which is funny because he's 6'5". He's not short, but he looks round. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched him the first time and was like, what's this guy like 6'2", 6'3"? Oh my God, he's 6'5". This is insane. This is This is a man that can really do some damage.
All right, we've moved past our 10th through 7th players. Now let's do the next 3 interior offensive linemen, 6, 5, and 4. I'll let you go first. Who is your 6th through 4th interior lineman in this draft?
So at number 6, I do go with Jarrett Patterson, the guard out of Notre Dame. Number 5, I've got John Michael Schmitz, center number 1.
Wow, you have him at 5. I can't wait to talk about him because he's the best center. We agree on that part.
And then at 4, I've got Steve Avila out of TCU. I love me some Steve Avila.
Me too. He is my 4th as well. So I'll go backwards. My interior offensive lineman 4 is Steve Avila out of TCU. My 5th is Osiris Torrence out of Florida. That's the guy maybe that I'm most different on this list. And then my 6th interior offensive lineman is Andrew Vorhees out of USC.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that reaction makes me think we should talk about Vorhees first. Let's start with the Vorhees.
I like Vorhees, man. I'm scared to death of investing a high draft pick in a guy that's probably not going to play at all in 2023. But man,
I mean, speaking of the Eagles, this guy's got Eagles written all over him.
Yeah, he does. But
be a Lane Johnson replacement or something in a year or two, and just keep the ball rolling. Right, it's so annoying, right? Because this guy would be out of the reach of those good teams if he hadn't torn his ACL on the field in front of me in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago. But he's going to end up being a stash for somebody that can afford it.
Yeah, absolutely agree there.
So let's talk a little bit more about him because he warrants, even though he's not going to play in this first year, he warrants some discussion. Particularly, I'm going to pull up his mock draftable data here because he's got some pretty impressive numbers. Andrew Vorhees. It turns out there's a lot of Andrews out there.
I can tell you he's my number 10 guard. So if we eliminated the centers from,
he would be on this list.
Yeah, he would be on this list.
Okay. So he is very tall, 6'6" and 1/8 inches tall, 96th percentile, 310 pounds, 41st percentile, plenty, fine. Single digit percentile for arm length. That's why he's an interior guy. He's got some explosiveness to him though. 66th and 71st percentile on his vert and his broad. Redshirt senior, so he's played a lot of football. That's the upside. The downside is he's a little bit older, but he wins with that experience, right? You won't find a more experienced lineman maybe anywhere. Like this guy played a lot of snaps of football. He's got 400 plus snaps according to PFF at left tackle, left guard, and right guard, like 400 each of those positions. So this guy's played all over the place and he's played a lot. 24 years old. He's going to be a guard in the NFL because of that length. He can probably play tackle in a pinch just because he's got the experience there, but you're going to want him at the guard level. If I had to knock him a little bit, the hand placement on tape wasn't the greatest in the world. In terms of just overall with him, if you're looking for areas to improve, it's definitely, for me at least, there's just some little technique things. His footwork can improve, and maybe that's a result of switching positions every 10 seconds. I think his hand placement is all right, but he's got decent play strength, and I think he's got some decent speed to him on tape. So I liked him quite a bit. That's why I have him as my interior offensive lineman number 6. Your number 6 was who? Remind me.
Jarrett Patterson out of Notre Dame.
Okay, so let's talk about him.
Yeah, a guy that was once considered kind of a fringe first rounder seems to be falling down the opposite trajectory, but I still like him. I think he's one of the most technically polished interior offensive linemen in the draft. I agree with that. Depends on what you want to do with Peter Skoronski. If, Skoronski's not in the fold, Patterson may be the most technically refined interior lineman in the draft. 6'4", 304. And he's not the most explosive athlete. I think he's got the footwork, the hand usage down. He's poised. He's fluid moving laterally. I don't know that I would necessarily say that he's explosive, but he's a good smooth mover. I'd like to see him get a little more powerful and aggressive in run blocking. And he also did this weird thing at the Senior Bowl where, like, first contact with the defender, that first pop, he would like leave his feet to reestablish. And that's a huge no-no. But
yeah, no.
I didn't see it too often, but
turns out it's easier to move you if your feet aren't on the ground.
Who would know?
Who would have thought?
But I think, you know, the lack of aggression is more of a minor weakness than the leaving the feet thing.
Right.
But I think he could really end up being a really good, polished, NFL ready guard right away for a team that needs guard help.
No, I agree entirely. You look at his numbers here. He's the 125th overall player on the consensus mock draft board. He's interior offensive lineman number 7. And he's still in that, day 2, middle day 2 range. So if you're looking for somebody that, you mentioned Peter Skoronski in terms of just technical polish. Maybe Patterson is your comp to Skoronski. Like if you're trying to get the off-brand version of Skoronski later in the draft, I could totally see Patterson being one of those guys. If you're looking for a guard that could maybe play day 1 later in the draft, he might be that guy. The reason why he's not on my board and what I knock him for, because I agree he's very polished. I think he's among the more ready guys, certainly at that day 2, day 3 area in the draft. His ceiling is just lower for me. He's 6'5", 306 pounds.
That's fair. Yeah.
On tape, I just saw a dude, to be honest. Like, I don't have any deep thoughts on this guy. It's not like, oh, his hand placement is this, or I think he needs to add some weight, or he's not bendy. No, like he just didn't impress me with anything. I thought he was competent at everything and unimpressive in everything as well. So I just think he's a guy.
That's what a lot of guys think. I think that's why he's falling.
Yeah,
he's once considered one of the top prospects, and now everybody's getting around to watching the tape, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, he's a guy."
Well, but the point that I think I should make here, in fairness to Jarrett Patterson and all the just a guys out there, when it comes to talking about the Jags, the just a guys in the NFL, it's a little bit more derogatory in my eyes, at least, than when we talk about guys that are just guys in the draft, because when you're doing draft valuation, you're watching tape, you're looking at traits. You aren't thinking in terms of what is he going to be. You're thinking in terms of a spectrum of what could he be, right?
Yes,
it's a bell curve of what is the floor, what is the ceiling, and where the 25th, 50th, or 75th percentile in between those two things. Like, where is he going to hang out most likely? Is he more likely to turn out better than average, worse than average? Like, that's what you're considering. And so it's very, once again, trying to eliminate as much noise and as many biases as possible from the way that we think about this. I think we oftentimes get enamored by the guys that have crazy high ceilings and ignore the fact that a lot of the guys that have crazy high ceilings, crazy high potential, if things went perfectly for them, they tend to have really low floors as well. It's a very much a boom bust proposition. Whereas some guys that I come away from evaluating them and I go, they're just a guy. Sometimes I think that because their high end is really low, but their floor might be really high. And that, as I'm talking about Patterson, I'm kind of regretting not making him number 10 or something, because there's no one or two things I can point to and be like, he's awesome at that. He's awesome in the run game. He's awesome in pass protection, but I can't really point to an element of his game where I go, I hate that. That's terrible. He's competent at everything. And that works in the NFL. Listen, you don't have to have an all-star guard. You don't have to have Quentin Nelson on your roster. You can have just a guy, and if he's good at what he does, the talent around him is going to make the whole unit succeed.
Well, I think you just perfectly summed up my feelings on why he could have a long career in the NFL.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And he could be the most boring, rich, and the most boring and rich guy in the league, and 31 fan bases don't know or care about him, but that one fan base who he plays for, they appreciate him because they know that he's part of the glue that makes that unit work for them. The next guy that we should talk about here, looking at our lists, let's do Steve Avila. We both agree on him. He is both of our interior offensive linemen 4. On the consensus board, he is interior offensive lineman number 3, 51st overall guy. So I would be very surprised if he is not gone by the end of the second round. He's a second round guy for sure. I don't really see a world in which he goes in the first round. I think right around 50 is exactly where he will be, the 40 to 55 range. Obviously, people got to see him on a big stage this past year as they went into the college football playoffs and actually won one of those games. So we got to see him twice. The star of that line for sure. This guy is if there's somebody on the interior list that I just look at and I think he's a wall. He's just in your way, big fella, good luck. Like you can't go through him. So you're going to have to climb over or under or go around somehow. Good luck. It's Steve Avila.
Yeah, there was a moment during Senior Bowl drills when they had him climb to the second level, which you don't think about with a man of his stature.
Nope.
I mean, you want to talk about a bowling ball build, it's Steve Avila.
Yeah. But I just realized I didn't mention any of the actual numbers, where I'm just assuming the audience knows what we're talking about. He's 6'3" and 5/8 inches tall and 332 pounds. Okay, now continue.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's a big fella. Big fella.
Yeah, so there's a moment at the Senior Bowl when they actually get this guy to the second level. And it hits on a point that I'll make in a minute. But to finish this story, he gets one-on-one with a linebacker. And I don't remember if it was, I think it might have been Dorian Williams.
Okay.
And my gut just sank. I'm like, oh my God, this poor linebacker is just about to get mowed down. And he did. Steve Avila just basically.
Can you call timeout in the middle of a play?
Throws him down.
Yeah, the linebacker just throwing it up, panicking.
Whoa,
my shoe's untied.
Like this is the Senior Bowl. We're not supposed to be burying each other out here. But that's.
I'd say, don't kill me before the draft, man.
Yeah, that's it indicates to me something, or it's an indicator of something larger about Steve Avila's game. It's that he looks so big that he doesn't appear to be moving as fast as he actually is. And that's why I watched the tape. And by the way,
like a bit of a glacier falling off, and it looks like it's moving in slow motion, but it's actually going at terminal velocity, falling to the ocean like that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I by the way, people make their jokes about that national championship game. Steve Avila actually had some pretty good reps in that.
He may have been the only guy that was
Yeah.
impressive on the in the purple that night,
going up against Jalen Carter, no less. So that was
I've heard of that guy. Yeah,
that was a good game from him. I think there's a fee fi fo fum kind of quality to him. You know,
I'm right. That's a draft jargon that I didn't have in the bag, but it's in the bag now. Fee fi fo fum when we're talking about linemen.
We got some Jack in the Beanstalk syndrome with him, but my man can move, and they weren't afraid to pull him. They weren't afraid to get him in space. And to me, man, I look at Steve Avila and I see a complete guard prospect that can do a little bit of everything pretty damn well.
No, I agree entirely. So Avila on the consensus board is the 3rd overall interior offensive lineman.
Love it.
Number 51 overall. As I'm saying these numbers out loud, I'm realizing that I'd already read them. So if you'd forgotten while Stoney was talking, that's where he's at on the consensus board. We have him as our 4th guy. Pulling up his numbers. Again, we mentioned the height and weight are the height's fine. The weight is ridiculous. 332 pounds, 33-inch arms, longer than most guards. Totally fine. What's up?
Well, he can also play center too.
Yes. That is totally fair. He can play center. He's among the more versatile interior guys. Now, you wouldn't want him on the outside. I don't think he's got he doesn't have the step for that. He's got the speed for it, but not the explosiveness. His straight line speed is actually kind of crazy for a 330 pounder. He ran a 5.2 140, which is the 69th percentile. And his 10-yard split is 1.86. That's 24th percentile. So that's reflective of the fact that he's a a refrigerator with legs. Like it takes a while, the momentum. He's a train. But then once he gets going, good luck. It's downhill, and you're if you're in the way, you're no longer going to be living when he gets done with you. He's got decent agility. His 3-cone and 20-yard shuttle are both right around the 50th percentile. So again, not super explosive, not a ton of acceleration. But what you're looking for in a complete guard is, is he a big fella? Can he move well, in a phone booth? And does he have agility to maybe, as a pulling guy? Can he get around the edge? Does he have a top speed to match with that, where he can fly and murder a linebacker at the second level who wishes he never got in the way? That is absolutely within Steve Avila's back. He can do those things. If I had to describe him in one word, Stoney, it's anchor. And we talk about his weight, which is similar to that. But his anchor is kind of crazy. That's why I opened up talking about him in the way of, you have to go around, over, or under. You cannot go through. There's an element this is the most elementary way possible. I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube videos where it's like an expert explains a concept to a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a high schooler, and a college student.
Yeah.
If I were to explain this guy, Steve Avila, to a 5-year-old, I would say, with an offensive lineman, their number one job when they're pass blocking is to not let the guy get to the guy behind them. And that helps. It helps a lot. It makes it a lot easier to do that if it's kind of impossible to get around you. Like if you have to take a taxi to get around you, and it's like you have to take I-40 all the way around Nashville, or a 440 all the way around Nashville, like that's what you have to do with Steve Avila. You can't just slide through the gap. And as an interior guy, that big body, it's like you have 1.5 linemen just in terms of space in the way. And again, that's a super elementary thing, but it bears repeating, because there truly are some outliers in the NFL. There's a guy that we're going to talk about on the tackles list who happens to be the biggest person you've ever heard of, who I'm going to say the exact same things for.
Yeah.
And you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it's not the case for everybody. They're all big. There are a handful of guys in the NFL where it's just like, what is one of their biggest traits? The fact that they're so big, it's hard to get around them, even if they stand still. And that's the case with Steve Avila. If I have to say something in terms of what can he improve on, as a run game guy, as a road grader, he's nice. But the thing that I won't rip this off, but I was listening to Mike Renner talk about this, and then I went and watched the tape and was like, you know what? I agree. His angles in the run game are kind of suspect at times. He can kind of overcommit a little bit. And maybe that's the fact that he's switched positions a little bit. I think he mentioned the fact that moving, a transposition issue from center to tackle, that was the thing that he mentioned that may have been a cause there. He lost too many blocks at just at the snap immediately because of a poor angle of attack. It's not a matter of he's not big enough or not strong enough. He doesn't pick the best angles sometimes. That's really the number one knock on him. Otherwise, I think he's among the safer picks on here. I'd be not shocked, but I'd be pretty surprised if Steve Avila flamed out and wasn't a competent tackle or guard at the next level. I think that this guy can play ball.
I think I want to move him to number one on my board. Which just
now that we just to be able to say it.
Yeah, I know. Like I'm tired of hiding my feelings for Steve Avila. He's one of my biggest
Mingo up there. Put Steve Avila up there. Same exact deal.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
I mean, listen, I wouldn't look. I'd look at you cross-eyed if you had Mingo at the top of your wide receiver board, but I would not look at you cross-eyed if you had Avila at the top of your wide receiver board. Truly, I would not. I mean, we have him as a top 4 guy. I'd take him in a heartbeat. Really, maybe the number one reason why I don't have him higher, Stoney, is he really does not have the versatility that my next 3 guys do. He does not have a lot of flexibility in how you can utilize him. A guy that has a little bit more flexibility in the way that you can deploy him, in my opinion, is my interior offensive lineman 5. Moving backwards for a moment, this guy I'm sure is in your top 3. There's no way you left him off of your board. It's O'Cyrus Torrence out of Florida. I'm lower on him than most, according to many, including the consensus draft board. So I guess according to most, he is the number 1 interior guy. Now that is, we've reached the point of the program where we need to discuss Peter Skoronski and the fact that some people have him on one or the other of their boards, and some people have him on both. Do you have him on your interior board?
I've got him on both.
Okay. So I had him on both originally. And then because I had a tackle because I had an interior guy that I wanted to squeeze in there in in Luke Weipler, we had to talk a little. I had to talk myself into leaving him as a tackle, even though I'll get ridiculed for that a little bit. I'm going to go all in on him being a tackle, and I will explain that more tomorrow. I'll let you explain him as a interior guy today, but I'm just parsing that by saying all of my guys would be moved down one. If you told me he had to be on my interior line board, he's the number 1 with a bullet, not even remotely close. He's not on my board. Osiris Torrence, when he's not on your board, and they don't consider him to be one on the consensus NFL mock draft database.com, he's a tackle. So the number one overall interior guy they have is Osiris Torrence. It's the 29th overall interior lineman. A lot of people talk about him like a bona fide first-round pick. I don't know if he's a bona fide first-round pick just because of how much talent there is at the tackle position, but then also at the tight end position, at the cornerback position, at the edge position, at the quarterback position. I wouldn't say there's a lot of talent at the wide receiver position, but teams are much more likely to convince themselves to overdraft a receiver than a guard. Like,
sure.
I just think he might get pushed out a little bit. He's for sure a top. I mean, I'd be floored if he's still there at 50. I'd be shocked if he's not gone by at least the first 10 or so picks on day 2. He underwhelmed me on tape. And I talked a little bit with a friend, a fellow friend of ours, James Foster, who's a friend of the show. He's not very high on him either. We talked about him maybe a month and a half ago on the show as a bit of a draft primer and just how he was one of the guys that James was lower on than the consensus. And I was kind of surprised by that. But then when I dug my teeth into him, I was kind of seeing the same things that James did. Where was he, before I say why I'm not a huge fan of him, where is he on your board? And maybe you can talk about the things that you do like about Osiris Torrence.
He's number 3 on my board, but it's really similar to your feelings on Jarrett Patterson. Like, he is just the most dude of all dudes.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Yep.
He's somebody that if
Patterson is just a dude, he's the just a dude free version, and I think Osiris Torrence is the 99 cent. He's the Twitter blue dude. Like, he's just it's slightly better, but it's not amazing. That's how I saw it.
If you need Osiris Torrence to do one thing and just stand there and not move and not get moved either, I think he's the best at that in the draft class.
And I love that we are so in lockstep on this guy, because that's the other main point I was going to make. Like, in terms of how many different things are in their bag, what is their skill set? Torrence, there are certain players that I'm stumbling all over my own words. There are certain players in the draft we were like, you could put him on any team and I would love the fit. I think he'd be amazing. Osiris Torrence is the complete opposite of that to me. I think that where he goes is very, very, very important. And I think it's going to be very specific to him as a player. And I think that may be the reason why he drops down, because every time we go through the whole list of the NFL, there aren't 32 teams taking him or passing on him. I think that there's 15 teams that are even considering him, frankly.
Yeah. I look at like the Baltimore Ravens as one of those teams, like the Philadelphia Eagles as one of those teams that could, and not necessarily fill an immediate need with someone like Torrence. But I think I look at it through the lens of what's going to translate to the NFL. And I think I'm looking at Osiris Torrence.
Torrence. Yeah.
Torrence? Just shorten his name. Yeah. Looking at him through the lens of, you know what, he's got a really high floor if he lands with the right team, where he can just stand there and do his thing for the next 10 years. I will say, people kind of raved about him the Senior Bowl week down in Mobile, Alabama.
Yep.
And there were a few times that I saw him get beat pretty badly by a quick interior defensive line pass rush ability. And it did kind of put a little bit of doubt in my mind, but I thought, you know what, the right offense, they're just going to ask him to go out there and mow people down. And if that's what you need him to do, and he's in a system where he can do that, I think he can have a pretty lengthy career in the NFL. But to me, there's nothing flashy about Osiris Torrence at all.
No, not at all. And when you look at different draft evaluators, you go to The Athletic, you go to PFF, you go to The Ringer, the write-up on this guy from pretty much everyone I've seen is basically reflective of our opinion that he's just a guy, but in nicer terms. Like, I'm looking at PFF's right now, and it says, what can he improve? Very little. There's not much on tape that I'd call a glaring issue. Me neither. There's not much on tape I'd call a glaring issue. There's also not much on tape that I'd be really all that jacked about. Not much to excite me. Like, you left out, you buried the lead there. I think you left out the important half of that sentence for people that are looking for high-end draft potential. He's got high-end draft floor, but the ceiling, agreed. It's just, he's a guard. He wins with very easy power. He's a powerful guy. He's a strong guy. And it's not his size you're going to be drafting him for by any means. If you pull up his measurables, I almost put in Torrence. Thanks a lot for that. I'm going to be saying that until the draft because of you.
Yeah.
He comes in. Here we go. He's got good size. Did I say you're not drafting him for his size? I meant you're not drafting him for his athleticism. You
Bingo,
are drafting him for his size. Thank you.
That's all you're drafting him for.
Yes, you are only drafting him for his size. You are not drafting him for his athleticism. He's 85th and 87th percentile height and weight. Okay, almost 6'6", 330 pounds. Another big fella like Avila.
Yeah,
not nearly as athletic, explosive, or agile as Avila. 20-yard shuttle, broad jump, vert, 40-yard dash, 10-yard split. All of those things are below the 41st percentile. His 40-yard dash is a 47th percentile. So he's got some decent straight line speed, but his everything else is not great. He's got relatively long arms. He's just an eighth of an inch shy of that 34-inch benchmark you're looking for tackles. So if he was like 50% more athletic, he could be a really good tackle, but he's not. And so, with him in college, I'm sitting here kind of rambling, trying to figure out what to say, because again, there's not a whole lot of good or bad to mention with him, right? Like I'm kind of at a loss for words.
Do you think it's weird that the Titans have shown an interest in him, considering that they've talked to like 30 different pass protectors and then Osiris Torrence? Like, are they just trying to gain intel on Anthony Richardson here?
Maybe. My answer to that question is yes and no. I do not find it weird that they're looking into him, because again, I think that they, depending on what they do with their first pick, are highly likely to be looking at linemen with their second pick at 41 overall. And because there may only be 15 or 16 teams in the entire league considering him, they may be thinking, well, if this guy who's on most draft boards, a first round pick, if he falls to us at 41, like we need to at least have we need to have a firm answer we're confident in as to whether or not we're interested in him. So that part makes sense to me. What I do find weird about them expressing interest in him is, again, from a scheme standpoint, I don't, if I were to give you the list of the 15 teams I think should be interested in him, the Titans aren't necessarily on that list. And that's not because of the Titans of old. That's because of what I think the Titans are trying to become now. If you'd asked me during last year's draft, I'd have said, yeah, man, the Titans should absolutely be looking at Osiris Torrence. They're just, they're going to want to run, and he can just be in the way in the run game. Cool. But they're seemingly not interested in doing that as much. I guess that's not true. They want to be good run blockers, but they are shifting their focus based on who they've signed in free agency. The Daniel Brunskills, so many names now. Who's the left tackle? Andre Dillard. Thank you. Yeah. Andre Dillard out of Philadelphia. Those guys are better pass blockers than they are run blockers. Osiris Torrence is kind of the opposite to me. Not kind of. He's definitively the opposite if you trust PFF's grades. He's like 14 points better as a run blocker than a pass blocker. He's a fine pass blocker, but that was with a Florida team that faced some good competition in the SEC for sure. But he's got somebody that is relatively good at navigating the pocket back there in Anthony Richardson, maybe the best at navigating the pocket in this class, depending on who you ask. So I'm sure that probably played a decent role. As a zone blocker, that's what he's best at is his zone ability. He's got a 90.2 grade on PFF. And for those that aren't familiar, they don't throw around 90 grades willy-nilly. So his ability as a zone blocker is very, very high. But that's because, again, he's just a body in the way. Beyond that, skill-wise, it was fine, right? But yeah, that's really all I have to say on him. We can move into our top three if you're ready. And actually, he was your third guy, I guess.
I was about to say he was number 3 for me. So
anybody? Have we missed your? Let's see.
I do want to mention John Michael Schmitz.
Okay, no, that's the flip flop here. He's in my top 3. So we'll talk about him now, but let's lay out our top 3s real quick. So you had him, John Michael Schmitz, at 5. I have him in my top 3. I'll get to him in a second. Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin at 3 for me. I'm very high on Tippmann compared to I'm not very high, but higher than the consensus. I have John Michael Schmitz as my number 2 overall interior guy. I love this guy. You may have thought you loved him.
No, I don't love him that much.
You don't love him like I love him. I don't love Mingo like you love Mingo. You don't love Schmitz like I love Schmitz. I'm big on him, but I haven't beat out my number 1 interior offensive lineman, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make him a tackle or an interior guy. I made him an interior guy, and I think he's the best in the bunch. It's Cody Mauch. Who are your top 3?
You stole my thunder. He's my number 2.
Is he number 2? Okay.
Yeah. And that's only because I've got Skoronski at number 1.
Right. So he'd be your number 1 if we both had Skoronski and Mauch mixed and matched.
I thought I was going to bring a hot take to the Hot Read podcast.
No, it counts. It counts. Skoronski's the outlier. It's like saying that Jeffrey Simmons has the most money for defensive tackles. We all know it's not more than Aaron Donald, but like it's still impressive. We know that Skoronski's the best talent at the entire offensive line position in this draft. But interior specific guys, it's Cody Mauch. And I expected you to come in here high on him because I remember us talking about him and what you'd seen from him at the Senior Bowl. Speaking of versatility, not to get ahead of ourselves, but let's start with John Michael Schmitz. We're both very high on him. He is your interior offensive lineman 5. He's my interior offensive lineman number 2 on the consensus board. He is listed as an interior offensive lineman. He's the number 4 guy, 53rd overall. So he's going to be available. I am relatively confident he will be there and ripe for picking right around the 41 area with the Titans. Now they're not going to be able to wait until the 3rd round if they want him. If they want him, they'd have to take him at 41. But I love this guy for a number of reasons. Chief amongst them is his versatility. You are the guest, though. I'll let you go first. What did you see in... Wait a second. I'm so sorry. I just read you Cody Mauch numbers. John Michael Schmitz is higher than that. I got my guys mixed up.
All right.
This is a tough one for me. I'm juggling a lot of things right now. John Michael Schmitz, he's the 45th overall player. Everything else I said applies. He's going to be right for picking around 41. He won't be there at 3. Okay. Now that we've talked about the right guy, John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota, he's versatile as well, in my opinion. What did you like about him?
Man, I think he's a really safe, high floor prospect that
safe. Yep.
outlast the entire interior offensive line class in terms of tenure in the NFL.
And why is that?
Well, I just like he's got the goods from the neck up. I mean, he's a field general. Zach and I both noticed him at the Senior Bowl, like basically running the drills with the interior offensive linemen. Calling things out, directing traffic, giving guys tips. I mean, it almost felt like another coach on the field. And this kid's, still, he's not even in the NFL yet. So I felt like he had that field general vibe going for him. But then, like the first step, man, I mean, he's so quick to get into space and lateral agility, all of that sort of stuff. Like he's good balance, good technique. To me, he looks like a really refined NFL ready prospect that, man, people say he's like the Northern Ben Jones. And I don't do a lot of player comparisons
too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Looking at him. Yeah.
I don't like doing a lot of player comparisons because like you never know. I mean, careers can go in a million different ways. You're
always too high or low on your comparison, right? It's either like, why'd you compare him to that bum? Or no, he's not going to be Randy Moss. Shut up. Okay. Okay, fine. If you're just going to critique the comps, then I'm not going to comp. I'm with you.
Yeah. But man, like the Ben Jones comparison, it hits with me. It hits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. His role is as a center for sure. You want somebody that sees the game the way that Schmitz does. Whenever you read about him, pretty much anybody that's done a profile on him, they will mention what it seems, saw in real life, in the wild, in Mobile. This guy's a leader. He's a communicator. He is an intelligent football player. This guy gets it. And I mean, if you're looking for a center to be a long-time starter in the NFL, that it's those guys. It's the cerebral guys. It's the Jason Kelce's. It's the Ben Joneses who have really, really long careers. He had a long college career, played 4 full years in college in Minnesota. From a measurable standpoint, that's the low point for him. What he can improve on, in my opinion, is just his size. You can't get any taller, but he can put on a little bit of weight. He's just north of 301 pounds, 38th percentile for guards, or for centers rather, 6'3", 54th percentile. His arm length is what you'd expect for a center. His speed is also what you'd expect for a center, but all of those metrics are relatively low. But he's got really nice agility and explosiveness, which again, I like. Let's take agility and explosiveness and put those vocab words in a phone booth and make an awesome center. That's what this guy is. 68th, 62nd, 68th, 51st percentile for the vert, broad, shuttle, and cone drills, respectively. So he's above average in all of those agility and explosiveness metrics. When you look at his college performance, he's relatively consistent year to year, game to game. And then you look year to year, he's one of those guys that, like I said, I'm a sucker for a guy that is still on an upward trajectory. This guy is. Let me read you his 2020, 21, and 22 PFF overall season grades. He starts out monstrous. And again, he's playing for Minnesota, so he's not playing the best competition in college, but he's not playing D3 either. In 2020, he had an 82.9 grade. In 21, 88.5. And then in 22, 92.3. 92.3 is a ridiculous grade. That is just a tenth of a point shy of the grade that PFF gave him for a run blocking grade, 92.4. Again, another Ben Jones comp. Like he's a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, but he's a really good pass blocker too. 81 overall grade in his entire career, or excuse me, it doesn't give me the entire career here, but in his last season, we can go with that. That sample size, he allowed 2 sacks, 1 hit, and 5 hurries. And then when you break it down from a tape standpoint, he's not the best at being able to get out of trouble. That's the other thing that stuck out to me about him. It's similar to Steve Avila. Like when things go bad at the jump, he's not great at adjusting, which is easier said than done. When he does manage to get his hands on the guy and he's not getting backdoored or getting blown by or taking a bad angle or whatever, he's a very savvy player. He's got a ton of experience. He sees the field very well. He's able to communicate, call outs, find the Mike linebacker, find the will linebacker, change assignments, like that. That's what you want in your center. And that's a part of the reason why a lot of guys at the center position that come out of the draft don't start right away, because there's a massive mental element, field general element that they need to learn to be able to operate at that position. John Michael Schmitz is a guy that I think could be a day one starter and then start every day from day one through day 10,000 or whatever it is. I'm with you. I think a 10, 11, 12 year career is absolutely in the cards for this guy. I like him a lot. He may never be a Pro Bowler, but he may be a bona fide starter, above average starter for a team, again, for over a decade. And that's what you're looking for in the draft. What else can you really ask for, right?
That's right. We stand Northern Ben Jones.
We do. We stand Northern Ben Jones, John Michael Jingleheimer Schmitz. The next guy we have to talk about here is a guy that you, correct me if I'm wrong, you left Joe Tippmann off your board.
I did, man.
Okay.
I'm not the
I'm really high on Joe Tippmann compared to you.
Let me see where he's at on my big
board. Where is he on your board? And what position do you, I mean, surely you have him as a guard, right?
I've got him at center.
Okay. I don't know why I said surely. I agree he could play a center position. He's certainly no tackle, but I could see him at the center role. I'm trying to find where he is on the consensus board here. Oh, I see. Okay.
I've got him at center number 7.
Center 7? Yeah. Stoney, you got to go back and rewatch some Joe Tippmann tape. Okay.
I just watched him today.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I got John Michael
then you know
Schmitz.
What? Before I go into talking about him, tell me, you're fresh off the tape. You watched him today. What was it about him that left you underwhelmed?
I just love my note in my eval. You won't find the biggest Tippmann fan here. I think his game is predicated on his strength and power in run blocking, but I'm not really sold on anything else that he does. I think, he initiates contact in the run. I think the name of his game is pull and demolish. And I think that gives him a high floor in the right offense. But there were 2 things that really bothered me watching him. And I watched his game against Illinois, Ohio State, and Michigan State. His hands come from under quite a bit. It's almost like he's trying to double undercut the defensive tackle and like straight into the armpits or something like that. So his hands,
I have written down here on my can improve section is hand use, hand placement. So I agree.
Way.
I'm with you.
That's
there.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I think he kind of comes out a little flaily again. Like I'm just making up draft terminology here on this.
No. That's canon. Flaily is firmly within the Rolodex. Yeah.
But it allows rushers to get their hands on his chest and shoulders. They can punch him. They can pretty easily reroute him. The twitchy interior rushers can just absolutely work the guy if they play with their hands. But it also kind of felt like he was on the ground quite a bit to be such a powerful, strong guy. It kind of felt like he was pretty easily removed from the play at times. And then there were times that I noticed he would be out in space in pursuit of a play, and would just like bump into somebody and would be on the ground. So I was kind of like, I don't know. Again, kind of watching and thinking about these guys through the lens of the Tennessee Titans, I just thought, I don't know if he really fits the profile of what they seem to be looking for out of this draft class based on who they're meeting with outside of Osiris Torrence.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, you started your discussion on Joe Tippmann saying that you're not the biggest Tippmann fan out there. Mm-hmm. Hilarious. But have you seen him with his helmet off? Because I feel like I'm shocked you can hold that opinion. You're not a fan of him when you've seen that head of hair.
I didn't say I didn't want to go have a beer with the guy.
Well, I want to be his best friend based on his haircut. Yeah, no, he looks like the best hang in the world. This guy, he's like, I don't even know a good comp. He's like prime Billy Ray Cyrus if he added 100 pounds. is genuinely what he looks like. Very full mullet, glorious beard, chin strap beard situation. He's got the mustache to boot. Like I think the look is awesome in terms of the football, which I guess comes secondary here. The reason why I'm so high on him is I kept watching him and kept looking at the numbers, and I truly just saw Aaron Brewer if he was big enough to be good at being Aaron Brewer.
You know what?
As a guard.
I can kind of see that. For sure.
And that's important because as a guard, Aaron Brewer is in fact not big enough to be good at being Aaron Brewer, but Joe Tippmann is big enough to be good at being Aaron Brewer.
He's got that tougher than a $2 steak quality about him.
He does, and he's got the size to match. So like if you're looking at the actual comp, right? Aaron Brewer, his size numbers. Let me see. I'm sure he's on nope, just kidding. He's not on Mock Draft Bowl. I thought he might be. They got a lot of guys, but they don't have him on there. He, I mean, it makes sense. He's kind of a smaller school guy. Went to Texas State, but Aaron Brewer, 6'1", 274. Okay, when we go look at Tippmann, he's 6'6", so he's got 5 inches on the guy. 97th percentile for height, and then 313 pounds. How many pounds did Aaron Brewer weigh? 274. Okay, yeah. So he's got well over or. Yeah, almost 50. No, math. 40 pounds. He's got 40 pounds on Aaron Brewer. He's got a really nice wingspan for a guy that only has 32 3/4 inch arms. He's got an 80-inch wingspan, so like his reach is better than I think his arm length lets on. But the thing that I have to narrow in on here, and the reason again why I have him so high, is because I see him as that more undersized guard that if utilized the correct way, he's got a creative offensive line coach or coordinator, offensive coordinator that utilizes him in a way that is most advantageous for his play style and for his size, in my opinion. I think he can be a stud. Truly, I do. You hear when the Titans were still trying to use Aaron Brewer at that guard position. Guys like me and Mike Herndon, I remember on the Mike Herndon show all the way back like in week 4 last year, we're going through some of the tape and doing a little bit of defending our guy, Aaron Brewer, because, yeah, he's got some shortcomings and it got really bad when he didn't have a great left tackle to help him out. But generally speaking, his ability to climb to the second level and be the ultimate mismatch from an athleticism and size standpoint as a pulling guard is ridiculous. And I think that is what you've got in Joe Tippmann. He's got the athleticism to pair with the size necessary to hang as a traditional guard. But that athleticism is ridiculous. And I'm going to pull up his testing numbers here. Oh, shoot. Okay, just to trust me, because on tape, I mean, Stoney is not high on him, and at least Stoney can corroborate. Guy's athletic, right? We don't have the explosiveness or speed numbers on him, or at least I'm not seeing them here. He absolutely is an explosive, agile, quick athlete. His role is definitely as a guard or a center. I don't see him moving outside under any circumstances. And I agree he needs to have tighter hands. But, man, I just can't shake the fact that if he gets put with the right guy, he uses him in that way and just creates the ultimate mismatch 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a game with some poor linebacker or some poor edge defender or some poor secondary player, who might truly die. That mismatch at the second level in a run scheme could be really nasty, and he could be your who's so many names I'm now forgetting names. Who's the tight end quarterback that was with New Orleans and now is with Denver?
Wait, I have the tight end quarterback.
Yeah, the guy that plays quarterback. Sean Payton swears he's a quarterback, but he's really a tight end, and he plays like
Hill?
Yes, Taysom Hill. Thank you.
Okay,
I could not get his name in my head to save my life. He could be the Taysom Hill of the offensive line to me. He could be your secret weapon, is what I was trying to get at. Like the guy that can do something that a lot of guys at that position cannot do. I think Joe Tippmann could. So, like, is it a projection-based ranking at 3? Yeah, absolutely it is, on my part at least. But I'm pretty confident he could be that guy. Does that maybe change your mind a little bit on him? Have I planted that thought into your head?
No, because I don't have my list in front of me, so I don't remember off the top of my head who the 6 guys are in front of him.
Fair
he might have moved past Ricky Stromberg. You might have got me there.
Okay. All right. Well, that leaves us with just one guy, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the guy that, nope, just kidding. You've got Skoronski still. One guy that we have in common. That's Cody Mauch.
Skoronski's easy, though. I can get him out of the way real quick.
Let's do that. Let's have you cover Skoronski, and we can maybe talk about him a little bit more in detail on tomorrow's episode when we tackle the tackles, because he is on my board. What do you like about Skoronski? Everyone knows why you have him as an interior guy as well as a tackle. That length is an issue, but it's pretty universally understood that in terms of overall offensive lineman talent in this draft, the number 1 guy is Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern with the bullet.
I think that he is a very skillful player. He's very refined. He plays with good positioning. The things that I worry about with Skoronski aren't even arm length related necessarily. I think that does impact his reach, and that's important when you're playing tackle in the NFL, but I don't think it's so bad that you don't even give the guy a shot. And ultimately that's why I left him on my tackle list. But for me, it's about, man, I know he tested well athletically, but there was something about the eye test watching the tape that I just don't think he's very explosive, very speedy. I think that's a reason to kick him inside. And I didn't see consistent aggression out of him. I think there's God, I hate to use the term. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not even. Well,
you have to say it now.
Now I have to say it. I don't want to call him soft because I don't think he's soft. But I think, you know what? I think he lacks an edge. I don't think there's an edge to his game. And ultimately, I
talking about Peter Skoronski here.
I just don't think that he's got a
listen,
punishing kind of mindset.
To another. This is interesting because this is the most I've disagreed with anything you've said today. Yeah, but please continue. I'll defend it tomorrow.
You just put him inside at guard, and I think he's going to be good. And listen, like I said, I agree there. He's going to be. I think if you want to give him a shot at tackle, you can. I think he's built to play guard, and I just don't think that he has the. I don't know that I would call him elite among the tackles, if that makes sense.
And if that's the argument, then I disagree, but I can totally understand why that's the argument. This is truly a tease. Just consider it a 2-part special. Frankly, you'll have to tune in tomorrow if you want to hear me defend my guy. My guy here. It's a shame that he has been dragged through the mud as much as he has this draft season, because he truly is an amazing player. Like, he's going to be good in the NFL. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind he's going to be. If you told me I need you to pick 5 players from this draft class who you are confident will be NFL average level starters or better, he would be among one of those 5 guys. Now, the debate obviously is whether or not he's a tackle value or a guard value. Worst case scenario, in my opinion, is he's a very, 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 very good guard. And so I appreciate you at least putting him at number 1 on your list. On my list, because I have Skoronski on my tackle list, it's Cody Mauch at 1, and you've got Cody Mauch as your best non-Skoronski guy. So let's dive into him. You got very excited about Cody Mauch. I remember in Mobile for good reasons. I got very excited about him when I got to meet him and then see him in Indianapolis. We both have firsthand experience with Cody Mauch. We both watched the tape on him. We both understand just how versatile a player he is. On the consensus board, for reference, Cody Mauch is the number 4 interior offensive lineman, 53rd overall. So just like Steve Avila and John Michael Schmitz, he's going to be there probably at the 41st pick, the Titans' second round pick. I'd be floored if he's there beyond that. And frankly, if I had to pick any of those 3 guys to be gone by 41, it's Cody Mauch. I just think he's going to be because of his incredible versatility, he's going to be appetizing to a ton of teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no other offensive lineman in this draft class that offers true 5-position versatility along the offensive line.
I had that written down. Yes, he's the only guy. We agree completely. He's the only guy that could technically play all of the positions competently, in my opinion.
But he's athletic, man. He plays with such a nasty streak, a punch at the second level. I think I don't know if I'd call him a wrestler, but like, man,
doesn't he have a wrestling background? I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, I guess he could literally be a wrestler.
I think he literally is a wrestler. So if you see wrestling elements of his game, I think it tracks, because I'm pretty sure he was a very good wrestler.
But I think like wrestling implies that the other party is wrestling back. And that's not always the case with Cody Mauch, because he gets his hands on people and just slings them to the ground.
Yeah, that paints a good picture. No, I agree.
Yeah. He's a fighter, man. And he is the type of player that wants to drag you down to a knife fight in the mud, man. I love watching him play. When I talk about competitive spirit and fire being such a big thing for me when I watch offensive linemen, I don't think anybody in this draft class has it quite like Cody Mauch does.
No, I agree. Let's look at his measurables here as my computer decides to be very slow on me. Cody Mauch is, because of that versatility, as you could imagine, he's not the biggest guy, but he's very athletic. When it comes to versatility, it's usually because they're very athletic. The size is lacking for sure. 6'5", that's not necessarily lacking. 30th percentile for tackles. Again, he's listed as a tackle on Mock Draftable. That'd be higher for the guards. 302 pounds is 12th percentile for tackles. I guess we should, before I even finish, well, I'll run down the numbers here, but then I have a question for you.
Okay.
32 and 3/8 inch arms, 5th percentile for tackles. Very short arms for a tackle. His 40-yard dash and 10-yard split are good. 10-yard split is middle of the road. 40-yard dash, 5.08. 82nd percentile for a tackle. Not as good for a guard, but still almost 5 flat is very impressive for a big fella. He can move. And by the way, tangent, go find the tweet where I tagged Stoney from like 3 weeks ago. Is a screen cap that I accidentally illegally got at the combine that I may have taken a picture I wasn't supposed to, but I wanted to take a picture of some of these guys, and so I snuck this one, and it's this glorious mane flowing in the wind as Cody Mauch runs down with the ferocity. It looks, if you were in the way of this man in this picture, and I'm going to try to paint the picture for you here, it would be like, similar to the feeling of being chased by a bear. Like you're looking for a friend but nearby to trip, so that whoever's chasing, so that Cody Mauch eats him and not you. That is absolutely the way. And maybe that all just ties into the fact that he is a wrestler. He's a bear out there. His vertical jump, broad jump, 3-cone, shuttle, all of them well above average. 93rd percentile 3-cone, 7.33 3-cone. For draft nerds will understand, for a guy of his size, a 300-pounder doing a 7.33 is stupid. So he's got the goods from an athletic standpoint. He's just not the biggest guy in the world. That established, do you, Stoney, see any world in which he is playing tackle for anybody in the NFL? I don't. I think he could in a pinch, but I don't see.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah,
trying it unless
an emergency situation, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he ends up with a team that has 5 established starters, but they need that 6th man to kind of come off the bench wherever. Fill in, and maybe he could fill that role, but I think he's going to make his hay in the NFL as a guard.
And that's the thing. He only has a total of, I can count all this out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 15 total snaps in college, not at left tackle or right tackle. He's got 103 more at right tackle, and then 800, and 450 at left tackle. He was a left tackle in college for sure. He was the his predecessor is a guy that Titans fans are going to know, who has not worked out the greatest in Nashville so far. But Cody Mauch is somebody who you're having to project a little bit, again, because he played tackle.
Sure.
So you see him on tape, and this is what I saw on tape. I'm wondering if you saw the same thing. There were some times that I wish he dominated the talent level of players he was playing against more than he does, right? He's playing at North Dakota State, lower level of competition for sure. He's not playing the SEC schools or the Big Ten schools. And so he's dominating guys, but you're trying to make an NFL comparison in your head. You're trying to do the calculus and be like, okay, well, what does what does that level of performance against this guy that's never going to sniff professional football translate in terms of up against a star NFL edge rusher or a star NFL defensive tackle? When Jeffrey Simmons goes up against this guy, what's it going to look like? Probably not good, by the way, but that's just Jeffrey Simmons. He is somebody that didn't dominate a ton on the edge like I would like to see him do. Did he dominate? Yeah, but because he's playing such low level of talent, I want to see him crush dudes. He didn't always crush dudes. I think at the guard position or the center position, he can crush dudes because the play strength is there. The size isn't, but the speed, the athleticism, the agility, the strength is all there. It's really his quickness is the biggest thing to me. He's a 300-pounder, and the way that he moves is really, really impressive. He's somebody that you could pull and use effectively in that way. Definitely a center or guard. If I had to knock him with one thing, Stoney, what would your biggest knock on him be? For me, it's probably just he's not the best pass protector in the world.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's his frame and exactly what you talked about, like the dominance on tape. Like you want to see the traits translate to the field, and I didn't feel like that was always the case with Cody Mauch. But he reminds me of a guy that I was high on last year, Cole Strange, who was 6'5", 305, smaller, or I shouldn't say smaller, lower level of competition, if you will. Didn't exactly dominate on tape, got into the right system with the New England Patriots, had a pretty good rookie year. I could see, I'm not saying Cody Mauch's going to slip into the first round the way that Strange did.
That's what I'm
be surprised if he did. But
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think that kind of player absolutely can be drafted much higher than people think. I mean, do you remember that soundbite from the Rams head coach where he was like, we feel dumb for ever even watching this guy. We don't have a pick until the third round. We thought we might take him first, and he's gone by day one. I could see him going in the first round for sure.
That's a lot of what I see in Cody Mauch, similar sort of things there. So it is like the dominance on the tape and then the frame. But this might sound crazy. Like he could be that offensive lineman that you report as eligible and throw a pass to as well.
That's not crazy at all. That's not crazy at all.
Play tight end a little bit in his history?
He started as a tight end. You must not have seen the before and after picture of him from college because while I'm talking about this, to say, I was going to make you look it up if you hadn't seen it. This guy came into college as a boy and is leaving a man. It is ridiculous, the physical transformation he's gone through. I'm trying to, on the fly here, pull up he was 221 pounds as a tight end and beefed up to 303 by the end of his playing time. So it looks like he didn't really play tight end at all. He came in and they immediately changed him over, or very quickly changed him over to a lineman and then to a left tackle. But gaining 80 pounds and still maintaining that freakish athleticism, that's a big deal. That makes him a bona fide stud athlete and the kind of guy that I think can work really well in the NFL. I think we can say we've done some really good work here because we've gone very long and we are done now. So just to recap, we're wrapping it up with a bow.
Did you expect to go an hour and 40 minutes on offensive guards? I told you I could talk about this stuff.
No, and yet we've gone like an hour and 20 on this pretty rancid safety group. So it's easy to get carried away. And if you're a draft nerd like you and I are, we kind of, maybe I'm sure there are a lot of folks that are listening to this podcast on 1.5 times. But soak up that information however fast or slow you all might want to. Just to recap everything and wrap it up with a bow here. Stoney's top 10, starting with number 10, his interior lineman 10 is Olu out of Michigan. His 9th interior lineman is Jaxson Kirkland out of Washington. Interior lineman 8 is Braeden Daniels out of Utah. 7 is Tyler Steen out of Alabama. 6 is Jarrett Patterson out of Notre Dame. 5, John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. 4, Steve Avila from TCU. 3, Osiris Torrence out of Florida. 2, Cody Mauch out of NDSU. And number 1, Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern. My top 10. My 10th interior lineman is Luke Weipler out of Ohio State. 9th is Emil Ekiyor Jr. out of Alabama. 8th is Olu out of Michigan. 7th is Chandler Zavala out of NC State. Interior lineman 6th is Andrew Vorhees out of USC. 5 is Osiris Torrence out of Florida. 4 is Steve Avila out of TCU. 3 is Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin. 2, John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. And 1, Cody Mauch out of North Dakota State. Stoney, we did an hour and 40 minutes on the interior lineman. We're going to just run it right back tomorrow with the tackles. I won't spend the first 30 minutes of our show talking and overarching ideas and bantering. We'll dive right in for the sake of the people. But excited to get to that. Appreciate everybody listening. Before we get out of here, make sure you rate, review, subscribe, do all those things. Share it with a friend this time of year. There's a lot of people that want to get up on their knowledge of the draft, and I maintain that this podcast is one of the very best resources to be able to do that. So send this to your friends and your family who are Titans fans. Make sure to check out, now that this show is over, the previous episodes where we cover the top 10 linebackers, safeties, edge defenders, and interior defensive linemen. Those are the last 4 episodes on this feed, and we go through, me and producer JT, who is not here with us today, go through our top 10 lists at those positions. Tomorrow, you got to tune in for all the things we teased today. Our tackle show comes out on Thursday morning. And then Friday morning, just to tease the rest of the week, we've got my mock draft 2.0 episode coming out where I'll go through the dramatic changes I've made. Let me just say this, Stoney. This week, I've been kind of red-pilled or blue-pilled, or whichever pill it is that Neo actually takes. I forget. It's been a long time and I'm not that old. It is a situation this week in my mind where I'm rethinking everything, because I think that this year is uniquely, it is going to end up being a year in which mock drafts across the nation are uniquely bad and wrong. I think that people are largely not on the same page in the media, and the fan scouts aren't on the same page as the front offices. And so I'm here for the chaos, excited for the chaos. Hey, before I ask you what you want to sell, just to segue, the chaos will be something that you and I get to experience together, because this is just on off the cuff here. Stoney Keeley is the first guest that we're announcing for our live draft show. He'll be with us for the second day, and then we may just go sicko mode and get the third day in there too. We'll see how well the first 2 nights go. It'll be JT and I, and then maybe some other guests on night 1, night 2. Definitely some extra guests, including my guy Stoney, and I'm excited. Round 2, day 2 is my favorite day.
Mine too. I'm with
round
you.
Round 1's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but round 2, you get almost triple the players. You get all the value. It's the area where people still know the names, but they don't quite know the game. There's a ton of value to be had. Like, I love day 2, so I cannot wait to be in person with you. We will watch that entire show together with all of our friends that will be joining us with the live stream. Make sure to put that on your calendar. You don't have any plans for the draft, folks. You got plans to be right wherever you're at with mobile phone service, that you can be watching this show and breaking it all down with us as we go through that live show. Now, Stoney, you've been so kind with your time. I'm going to ask you today. I'm going to ask you tomorrow. Tell the people where they can consume what is the most unique content, I think, in the entire Middle Tennessee area, at least. SoBros covers sports, of course. You clearly know what you're talking about, but you guys cover culture better than and differently than just about anybody around here. Tell the people what they need to be looking at.
Man, I appreciate that so much, Easton. At Stoney Keeley on Twitter. All of my work is at SoBrosNetwork.com. I have a Titans show in town as well, the Unofficial Titans podcast.
It's a good show, people. Listen to it.
Thank you. And my big board is available exclusively through the SoBros Network Patreon account, $5 a month. At this point, like, you just kick me $5 and then unsubscribe at the end of the month if you want to.
Is it $5 for like 2,000-3,000 words worth of analysis?
No, I've got my big board open. Let's see what we're up to.
That was a softball pitch. I need the number. I need the updated number.
The word count is currently 26,519. It is ridiculous. I am on
Stoney. Why? That's amazing.
I think I'm at 183 prospects total that have been graded. Well, not graded. I shouldn't say graded because I don't grade prospects, but I've written about 183 prospects sorted by positional rankings. I've got my overall top 32, which this is, I think, might be a hot take. I wanted to squeeze this in earlier, but I missed my moment.
Leave the people with the take.
I've got Cody Mauch at number 19 overall in this entire draft class.
Buddy,
right now.
I love that.
Now, listen, I already told you I still got to watch like half the cornerbacks, but right now
I forgot you don't have corner. Yeah, so he'll be number 42 by the time you're done, because
exactly.
There are some really good cornerbacks. But
$5 a month, patreon.com/SoBros Network. You get access to my big board there, and at SoBros Network on all major social media platforms. I'm not too hard to find in these internet streets, man.
Yeah, and he's the best, guys. Go check out that draft guide. Absolutely, it's worth every bit of that $5. You can find that in your couch. But geez, 26,000 words. Call him Stoney Dane Brugler Keeley, because he's got his own little little is the wrong word, his own medium-sized beast right here in Nashville. And hey, if you want somebody who's done that kind of legwork that you get in something like the Beast or a PFF mock draft or a PFF draft database, go to the guy in town who's doing it with the Titans in mind. Like, yeah, you did it agnostically, I'm sure. It is just looking at the guys, but there's something about being able to get evaluation on a prospect from somebody that understands your team. And when your team's a small market team like the Titans, and a lot of the national folks who talk about the Titans just don't quite understand them, it's nice to have somebody that understands them in the context of something like the draft. So Stoney is the man. Appreciate him and his time. For Stoney Keeley, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll be back with you, Stoney and I, tomorrow talking tackles. Cannot wait. Until then, Stoney, have a great day. Listeners, have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.